She would always be there for her family and for anyone who knew her, her friends.
Tonight, friends and family remember a Winnipeg woman killed during a series of random attacks.
They were chased down and they were murdered for nothing, for nothing.
Roger Bilodeau is sentenced in the killing of 2 Métis hunters in Alberta. And he may not be able to walk yet, but he sure knows how to dance. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. Roger Bilodeau was sentenced in an Alberta court late Friday for killing Maurice Cardinal and Jacob Samson, 2 Métis hunters who were gunned down by Bilodeau's son back in 2020. Now we have the family's reaction to the sentence. Here's Chris Stewart with that.
In March of 2020, Jacob Samson and his uncle Maurice Cardinal had completed a successful moose hunt near Glendon, Alberta. Roger Bilodeau told the court he believed the 2 men who had stopped by his driveway were scouting to steal from his property. Roger Bilodeau with his teenage son chased Jacob Samson and Maurice Cardinal in his truck with speeds up to 150 kilometers an hour on rural roads. During the chase, he called his son Anthony to follow and to bring a gun. Minutes later, Anthony arrived and shot both men. They left the 2 men on the road to die. In May of this year, Roger Bilodeau was convicted of 2 counts of manslaughter. His son, Anthony, was convicted of second-degree murder and manslaughter. This past Friday, the court heard victim impact statements from several family members of Maurice Cardinal and Jacob Samson. Emotional testimony that had several similarities in each one. Anxiety, nightmares, feelings of being unsafe outside. Emotions that take time to heal, if at all. Jacob and Maurice were described as family men. They provided for their families and community, and their loss was devastating. Late Friday, Justice Eric Macklin sentenced Roger Bilodeau to 10 years in prison minus time served. He was also credited extra time because of the COVID pandemic kept him in his cell longer instead of outside. He will spend 6 years inside prison. The family of Jacob and Maurice spoke to the media outside the court. Sarah Sanson is Jacob's widow.
10 years is, I don't know what to say about, but the judge at least said what we all knew, and that was that those boys were innocent, they were chased down, and they were murdered for nothing, for nothing.
Jacob and Maurice were huge contributors to our entire community, and so when you serve a sentence like that, as fair as it may seem, I guess, on paper, 2 lives are gone. And this gentleman is going to serve 6 years. And the reality of that is sick. It's sickening. And we need to make some changes.
Gina Lavaseur, Jacob's sister and Maurice's niece, says negative comments online and the posting of security camera footage showing both men getting shot by some media organizations led to distress and mental anguish for the family.
And the war that it has caused on the internet, the hate groups, social media, the release of this vicious video, and our children having to see it, there is no peace. It's just hurt and trauma, and we're going to have to heal from our grief.
Sarah Sansom was asked about her feelings towards Roger Bilodeau.
I don't really have anything to say to Roger.
Do you accept his apology?
No. I think for my own healing, I'll never, no, but at the same time, I need to forgive to move on. And I think for healing for all of us, but that's not for them. That's for our own healing, not for their, to forgive them, it's not to forgive them, it's to forgive for us.
Roger Bilodeau's son, Anthony Bilodeau, will be sentenced in November for his convictions of second-degree murder and manslaughter. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A teen wanted on a Canada-wide warrant in connection with 2 homicides and an aggravated assault in Winnipeg last week was arrested over the weekend. The 15-year-old was on the lam last week after a series of attacks. A judge took the rare step of naming the youth at the time, along with publicizing his photo in the interest of public safety. With the suspect now in custody, the family of a woman killed is speaking out. She's calling for more safety measures as Winnipeg's murder rate skyrockets. Here's Tamara Pimentel.
Loved ones of Danielle Ballantyne are remembering the 36-year-old as a protector of her family. Her sister Lorraine Ballantyne says she always helped those in need.
She would always be there for her family and for anyone who knew her, her friends, and even strangers that she met on the street, even though she was homeless herself.
Winnipeg police discovered Danielle's body 1 week ago in this apartment building in Winnipeg's Point Douglas area. Officers believe her death was part of a series of random attacks that involved 2 assaults. One of the assault victims, 54-year-old Marvin William Felix, died of his injuries while in hospital. 2 15-year-old boys are now in custody in connection with the incidents. They both face 2 counts of second-degree murder and aggravated assault. Lorraine says she feels the city is in danger and wants to see more done to keep Winnipeg's North End safe.
Danielle has been living here for going on 12 years, and she was always turned away from the resources, and she wanted to better herself.
All incidents are being investigated by the homicide unit. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
It's time for a quick break, but coming up, a new report shows when the feds send in third-party or co-managers to fix band finances, those finances often get worse. Stay with us. A new investigation by Canada's National Observer found that more than half of First Nations communities put in a third-party or co-management arrangement ended up with worse finances, not better. I spoke earlier with two of the researchers behind this bombshell report. Sherry, Patty, thanks so much for joining us. So first of all, I have to say I have such admiration for both of your work. This story was incredible. Can you tell us, how did this get started? I'll start with you, Patty.
Well, Sherry has been working on this for 10 years. We met through the Clean Water Broken Promises investigation, which APTN was a key member of. And when she'd reached a certain point in her research, Canada's National Observer brought me in to do the investigative storytelling and data examination and bring this to a more general audience.
Awesome. So Sherry, you've been working on this for 10 years. I know that, APTN had been kind of plugging away on something similar back in like 2004. What got you onto it in the first place? Was it through the Alberta Institute?
Actually, it was through work with the Algonquin Barrier Lake. They'd had third-party management imposed on them, and I had a very front-row view working with them for over a decade in the impacts of the policy, but also how coercive its imposition could be and how hard it was to get out of it.
There's the digging out of the hole of third-party management at Gull Bay. Chief King is quoted as saying, a whole bunch of people made money on our backs and on our misery. Sherry, you've seen it, I'm sure, a lot of times in your research, in your career. How common is this for people at home thinking like, oh, this must just be kind of a one-off situation where the government intervenes and and screws things up, makes things worse than what they were previously. Is that the case, or is it more common than we might think?
I think what's really extraordinary about this collaboration is that we were able to show decisively that this is a absolute trend and impact of the policy in terms of having very, very strong correlations with boil water advisories. For example, 65 out of 112 First Nations that we looked at that were under the policy between 2008 and 2016 ended up under boil water advisories or with significant disrepair to their housing. So this isn't something that can be just written off as happening maybe to a few communities. This is something that is absolutely endemic to the policy itself.
Patty, you've spent years delving into government and its dealings with First Nations. This investigation, obviously, but also Clean Water Broken Promises, what you were talking about before, that shows us Ottawa promises things, gets involved in things, and manages to screw it up. And it doesn't seem to matter which political party is in power. I'll put this to actually both of you. I'll start with you, Patty, and we go to Sherry. What is the common thread that the government manages to keep screwing things up, whatever file it is, whether it's water, whether it's management of bans? Is there a root problem, or is it a bunch of different problems?
Well, this policy dates to at least the 1990s. And what really strikes you, like reading all the documents and talking with people, is that there was no way First Nations could win using this policy. It relied on some of the, fundamental racist tropes that are at the heart of Canada's relationship with First Nations. The policy relies on the idea that First Nations people are not good financial managers. And so First Nations leaders and administrators were penalized for doing exactly the same fiscal prudence, like exactly the same budgetary moves that a non-Indigenous council member or mayor would not only receive praise for, but would be called, fiscally prudent. And so under this policy, if you can't win, then you're at the mercy of the system. And so people couldn't intervene when the federal government decided it was time to move in and put the intervention policy in place. And at that point, the First Nation had no possibility of preventing this. We found more than 24 court cases trying to alter various aspects of this policy, and there was just no getting out of it. So what it shows is that when the federal government moves in and moves elected leaders out of place or overrides elected leaders, it's not going to work out too well, probably, according to the data.
Yeah. Shiri, what would you add to that? I'm sure like you've seen it all at this point in your research. What would you add to that sentiment?
I think I would add the fact that reserves were built as debt traps in the sense that they've been systemically underfunded since really they were first set up. The funding formulas never matched the actual need in communities. So the fact that there is this high incident of what's called default, but is actually just mostly First Nations moving, budget lines around because they need to patch infrastructure so people have clean water, or they need money because there's a forest fire and they need to replace infrastructure. These crises are sort of self-producing because there aren't sufficient funds to be able to cover basic needs. And so I would say one thread of mismanagement that runs through this is the insufficient funding to First Nations through contribution agreements and through grant funding for infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got to wrap it up there. I'll leave last thoughts to you. Is there anything you'd like to add to this?
Well, we would love it if First Nations former and current administrators, leaders, community members, if you would like to see your data, how the community, the records that we were able to gather on what happened in your community while it was under default management policy, please contact us. So we've set up an email address, interventionpolicy@protonmail.com. interventionpolicy@protonmail.com. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. And again, good work. So much admiration for what you guys did.
Thank you so much for having us.
As mentioned, that investigation for the National Observer involved a story that APTN broke all the way back in 2004 when Gull Bay First Nation was put into third-party management for being $2.4 million in debt. But what happened over the 9 years while a third-party manager was running things was the band's debt actually doubled. The National Observer investigation shows that that's the case in half the time that the government is intervening in band finances. They actually get worse, not better. Let's take a look back at that story that helped spark this investigation. This is a story by Karen Pugliese, who was an APTN reporter at the time, then went on to become the news director here and is now executive editor at the National Observer.
Last year, the Auditor General's office looked at Indian Affairs' third-party management system. They found several flaws, the biggest being that the department could not always be sure it was getting good value for its money.
I think that there should be more rigor put into into the selection of them. We found that there was not often open bidding, and without those sort of processes and rigor, it's hard to know if you're getting appropriate value for money.
The Auditor General also found there was no way a chief or a community could appeal for help if they were getting bad service. Chief Wilfred King discovered that after a long letter-writing campaign. He's not happy with his third-party managers, and for good reason. The quarterly reports third party is supposed to file with the band are sent in late or not at all.
I have no idea in terms of what our financial status is. We have not been given any kind of financial reports in determining what our debt is, what accounts are payable, what accounts are receivable. And that's an ongoing problem, and that issue has been around for some time now.
The band's financial audit is 94 days overdue. Other paperwork owed the department is more than a year late. Wilfred's appealed to Indian Affairs, to the Auditor General, even the Prime Minister, to point to what he calls unwise spending. But addressing his concerns is no one's department. The money the chief is concerned about comes from Indian Affairs, which means it comes from taxpayers. Here's a few of his concerns. INAC bought 6 trailers for Gull Bay to offset the moldy housing crisis. The department paid $120,000 for trailers Health Canada said were unfit for human habitation. Then regional officials stalled on a ministerial commitment to purchase better trailers. This put several of Gull Bay's residents in a hotel, costing taxpayers more than $382,000. The department blamed the delay on a political split in the band council.
Yeah, there's no question that the money that is being spent on the hotels would certainly been better served for providing housing for the community. What's important here is that responsibility for housing is a First Nation issue. So as I mentioned to you before, if we couldn't get any resolution, and we had a number of meetings trying to resolve where we would put them and where the trailers would go, there's many factors that play into this.
Finally, the chief questions the cost of third-party management. Over 9 years, none of their debt has been paid off, and the interest cost taxpayers another $800,000. Most of the band's debt is owed to Indian Affairs, and until recently, the band's only income came from Indian Affairs. The chief says paying the department back with its own money is ludicrous. It's better to write off most of the debt.
Considering that Iraq is one of the richest oil-producing nations in the world, and the government of Canada forgave their $700 million loan or debt that was owed to the government of Canada, but yet an impoverished First Nation community, the government of Canada cannot forgive their debt.
If not, the interest will continue to rise, and if the estimates of the third-party manager are correct, will cost taxpayers an additional $3 million. That's not what's supposed to happen under third-party management.
I don't know the specifics of that First Nation, but it's not the aim that we would have. As I said, the direction would be to get control first of the debt and stop any escalation of the problems, and then to assist the First Nation in dealing with it and moving towards a co-management or recipient-managed situation so that the third-party manager wouldn't have to deal with it any longer, and the band would have the skills then to deal with it themselves.
It's the sort of thing that upsets the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and critics.
And the transparency, I think, is missing, and until that changes, we're not going to see value for money spent.
These guys seem to have absolute power. This is the problem. I mean, it's you're putting the community under trusteeship of a person they've never met, a stranger, usually from a completely different community. Who's watching them is a darn good question.
Third-party management has not worked as it should in Gull Bay, but if Gull Bay is unique, there's no way of knowing. Indian Affairs says that between 30 and 34 bands are currently under third-party management, but they don't keep statistics on how long they've been under. Indian Affairs also says they're changing the third-party management system to make it better, but those changes could be about 2 years away. Karen Pugliese, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Took Gull Bay 2 decades to get its finances back in order after that story. Well, for that National Observer investigation, you can find it at nationalobserver.com. We have to take another break, but when we come back, a dancing baby you're not going to soon forget. To stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Marie Feliciano shared a wonderful picture. Here's her and her husband with their sons, Jacob and Clark, taking in the beauty of Lake Louise in Alberta. Thanks, Marie, for sharing that with us. You can send your photos to share at aptn.ca, and you could be the chance to be our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast.
Off to the east coast, we've got a mix of sun and cloud and 25 in St. John's, 29 and sunny for Charlottetown. Happy Valley, Goose Bay, showers and 15. Kuujjuaq, showers and 17 degrees expected. Quebec City, showers and 26 degrees. Same with Saguenay. 22 in cloud for Peterborough and North Bay. Sault Ste. Marie, cloud and 18. Sunshine for Sioux Lookout, only place in the north. 21 degrees. 22 for Kapuskasing and Timmins, but cloudy. 15 and sunny for Thompson. The Pas, 23 sunny skies. 28 and sunny for Winnipeg. 30 and sunshine for Brandon. 30 for you in North Battleford and Saskatoon. 29s for Regina and Estevan, sunny skies. There's a chance of showers for Buffalo Narrows and 25 degrees. Mix of sun and cloud in Uranium City and 19. Sunny skies and 29 for Grand Prairie, Fort Chip, 23 sunny skies. Sun continues to the south, 29 in Edmonton, 30 in Medicine Hat, 34 in sunshine for Kamloops, 23s for Vancouver, Victoria, sunny skies there. East Lake, showers, a chance of showers, 17 degrees, 18 in Smithers, 14 for Mayo and Dawson City, and cloudy skies. Wachi, you're going to get some rain, 17. Wrigley and Fort Simpson, both 17, but a mix of sun and cloud. Tuktoyaktuk, 14 and sunny. Paulatuk, 15 and sunny. Whale Cove and Arviat, both 9 degrees and cloud. 7 and sunshine for Igloolik, 11 and sunny for Pangertown.
We'd like to share with you now one of the cutest videos that we've seen in quite some time. This baby boy might not be able to walk yet, but he sure knows how to dance. Here he is with horse dancers at the Chopaway First Nation powwow in Saskatchewan this past weekend. The video has over 700,000 views and over 150,000 likes on TikTok, and there's obviously good reason for that. Related and an interesting fact for you is the Jolly Jumper was invented by Anishinaabe Olivia Poole, who patented the device actually in the 1950s. She was one of the first Indigenous inventors down in the States. She got the idea growing up watching Ojibwe mothers tie straps over tree branches so babies could be held safe in a papoose while exercising their little legs just like that while their mums were doing work. So there you go. That is all the news that we have for you this Monday. I'm Melissa Ridgen. We're always grateful that you can join us. Have a great night.